Most anglers spool new line straight out of the box, but I like to do a couple of tests first because I want to make sure that the line doesn't let me down when I'm fishing. So in this case, I'm going to be comparing two lines. I'm going to be spooling two sets of reels with these, and I'm going to show you why I've chosen one for a certain job and another for a slightly different job. So the two lines in question are the Skyline, and this is a 10-pound mono in 0.28mm diameter. The next one is the Armourline, rated in 12-pound at 0.30. So there's very little difference in diameter between the 0.30 and the 0.28. But what I'm going to be able to demonstrate is that this is absolutely got more abrasion resistance than this. The first thing I want to look at is knot strength. Now, if you want to test knot strength, you need to test it in the actual situation that you're using it in. If you're tying your mono directly to a mainline swivel, you need to do that in your bench testing as well. Now, both of these lines are low diameter and they're meant to be used in conjunction with a leader. I'm going to be tying these to 0.50 mono snag leader, and I'm going to be using about 5 meters of that, and I'm using that to increase the abrasion resistance for the last 5 meters of the business end, and I'm also using it to absorb the shock of the cast. Right, we're going to start off with the 12-pound Armourline. And this test is not relevant to me, but it might be relevant to you. I'm just going to tie a simple 5-turn blood knot to a swivel and see how it does, see if it can pass this test. I know that these lines are actually rated on breaking strain without a knot. They've just done a straight, it's called a dry clamp test. They've put the line between two clamps like that and they've pulled and they rated it at 12 pounds. This is not the same knot strength as you would get in the real world. So this, if anything, is slightly optimistic rather than pessimistic. This is what I would call a real world test. And for this real world test, I am going to use a 5 kilo weight, and we'll see if we can pick this up. This is a pretty brutal test. In a fishing situation, there's no way that the knot should come under anywhere near this sort of load, but it's illustrative of the capabilities of the product. So we've picked up the dumbbell thus far. Is it going to go bang? We're off the deck. Yeah, so that's great. So what is the point of having real world 5 kilo of knot strength? If you're trying to use that main line without a leader and you tie a 3.5 ounce lead onto that main line and you cast it as hard as you can, if you've got skills and a powerful rod, then you can exceed the knot strength that you've got, even 5 kilo of knot strength. Some of the best casters hit the rod so hard they break the swivel off the top of the lead. When you're actually playing a carp, the knot strength shouldn't ever come under anything more than the test curve of your rod. If you're playing the carp with a 3-pound rod and you take it to max test curve and no more, then the knot is never going to come under more than 3 pound of load. So 5 kilo is 3-4 times factor of safety, if you like. But that safety factor is important because as line wears, if there's any abrasion, if there's any damage, when line is new, it's at its strongest. After you've used it for 6 months or a year, it's pretty old, it's pretty tired. It's not going to have the same sort of knot strength performance as it does when it comes out of the box. This for me is why it's relevant and why you should really test each knot, because even if you're not losing carp, if you start doing bigger chucks on bigger waters or fishing for bigger fish, you can suddenly find yourself in a problem. And certainly at my own lake in France, we got cats to 135 pounds and knot strength. Wow, that's really going to come under examination because those things pull like an absolute train. So if that's how you're actually going to use the main line, tying directly to a swivel, then that's how you should do the test. You should tie it to a swivel, hook it onto a weight and give it a lift and see how good your knots really are. Now for what I want to do, that swivel test is not relevant, so I'm going to cut that off and I'm going to tie it onto a leader. So these are the sort of leader setups that I'm using. This is my quick change running leader setup. There's no point in actually tying it to that because I can't actually deadlift that. I'd have to lift it from the top of a building or something. So no good doing that. But what I can do is I can simulate the knot strength by using just a very short amount of the material. and this is the 0.50 mono snag leader. So if I hook that on my rig and then tie the main line to that, I can get an idea of how good my knot is and what sort of knot is perfect for use between these two materials. So my knot of choice that I've been using for the last few years is something called the GT knot. There are loads of different knots out there, and there's loads of different discussions as to which one is best or the strongest. I'd ignore all of that, and you need to work out yourself which knot you can tie the best. Tweak that with the teeth, and then just a slow pull, gradually increasing the tension. Give them a little pulse, and bang, it's gone. And this is why you need to test them. You'd be very wrong if you think that every knot I tie is a good one, because it's not. So you can see where this knot has actually failed, the material is deformed slightly, so I'm going to cut all that off, because otherwise we've just got, yeah, there's weak parts in that material, so that's no good. We'll chuck that away and we'll just go again with a fresh bit. Okay, let's tighten that down again. Let's have another go. Slow pull, that feels better. Right, let's have a go with that. We've got the main line here, then we've got our leader, then we've got our weight. So no problem in the initial stages. Are we good enough to lift a 5 kilo weight on the leader? Yeah, we are. So to just show you how neat that knot would look in a fishing situation, we'll just cut that off there. And that's the result, a very, very small, neat, mega strong knot. That's going to be the bit flying through the rings. And then you've got the mono hitting, and then you've got the slightly fatter end of the mono, but the tag end of the mono is sticking out backwards. So it's going to fly through the rings on the cast, and that's what I want. But by doing work like this, it means that when I do set up the leaders for real, I know what knot to use. I know the technique to tie the knot. I know how hard I've got to pull, and I can be really, really sure if I've pulled hard enough, if I've cinched it down right, that that knot is never going to let me down. I'm going to be using this material in exactly the same setup, but this is going to be my extreme range setup. 0.28 diameter, that's pretty thin, and I need it to be able to do the same job. So I'm still going to be using it with a leader. So we're going to have a go at doing exactly the same knot and see if that knot suits this Skyline as well. Right, let's tighten that down. Nice. Right, so same weight, same knot, same leader material. Yeah, we're up and away first time. So the 0.28, yeah, it's a little bit thinner than the 0.30, but in a real world test using an actual leader knot to an actual leader material, I can still pick up that 5 kilo dumbbell on the main line. And I'll tell you what, you have a go at that yourself. That is not easy to do. It's a savage, savage test, but it's so important. If that knot fails, I've lost a fish. And this material, this is what I'm going to be fishing for 50s and 60s on a big, wide open park lake. So you really don't want to lose one of those because your knot went bust. So the reason why I've chosen 5 kilos is that that is what I feel I need for my own fishing. It might be completely over the top for the sort of angling that you do. So you set your weight limit to whatever you need to do. But knot strength isn't the whole story. You've also got to have abrasion resistance to combine with that knot strength. Because if your main line gets dragged over a rock or a branch and it fails because it's got no abrasion resistance, then you can have the strongest knot in the world. It hasn't done you any good because you've got no abrasion resistance. So this is one of my test rocks. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off some of this material. So we're going to do the 12-pound Armourline to start with. And I'm going to count the backs and the fourths. So 1, 2, 3, 28, 29, 30, 31. There we go, 31. And you could hear, as I got from about 20 to 30, you could hear the line picking up the damage. When they say it's got good abrasion resistance, I can guarantee that is a very, very good score indeed. Even though it might only be 12-pound line, 0.30, it's still really, really tough stuff. Let's try the Skyline. Now this material is designed for its casting performance. It's not optimized for its abrasion resistance, but I still need some abrasion resistance. So how bad at abrasion resistance is it? 23, 24, 25, 25. So there we go, 25 strokes. That's really very impressive. Just because it's optimised for casting doesn't mean it's a weak line, even for £10 line. That is a savage test. I've done these tests a few times now and I'm getting the same sort of numbers. Is Armourline more abrasion resistance than the Skyline? Yes, and that's a good thing. That's what it's designed to do. But can you cast the Armourline as far as you can cast the Skyline? Well, not quite, but it's not going to be far off. So if you need absolute extreme casting distance, then, which is what I want the Skyline to be, then that's what I'm going to use. If those two lines have got the abrasion resistance they've got, then what abrasion resistance has this got? Well, this is the £30.50 mono snag leader. Let's give it a go. 58, 59, 70. Ow. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I've lost all sensation in my fingers. That was 70, 80, something like that. So this hasn't even failed. It started to pick up damage. Very, very, very strong stuff. And this is what I'm using it for. I'm using it as a shock leader. I'm using it as a snag leader. This stuff also makes a fantastic hook link. And I've caught hundreds of carp using this material as hook link. So there we go, that's 300 metres of the Skyline loaded onto my old Ultegra here, and then I can just tie the leader on there with that GT knot. So I used these leaders for 5 sessions last year on this big park lake that I'm going to be targeting, and I'm just going to run these through my fingers now. I didn't notice any damage when I took them off, so I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be able to reuse this. There's no need to change the material. Obviously, if there was damage, then I'd have to reconstruct this from scratch, but if there's no damage, I'm very happy to reuse it. So this is my running ledger setup, and all I do is quick change on distance lead like that. This top beader's got a massive bore in it and it just sits very lightly on the top, and I'm not using this for a shock effect. I'm just using it to hold the lead and the rig together in flight. So the rig gets tied onto that end there, and then in flight it stops the drag from the cast that acts on the hook bait from separating the rig like that in flight, which is no good. So all I've got to do now, I've got to do this not for real on a real leader with the actual main line. This is not a test, this is not a drill. And over the years you just learn to pull hard enough for the setup that you're creating. So you simulate the test. You can't actually do the test, you just got to pull hard. So I've taken all the stretch, so I'm pulling that, all the stretch has gone out, taking it to its elastic limit, and that's good for me. Take a lot to break that. Well, it'll take about 5 kilos to break that. Then all I've got to do is wind the full length of the leader on. Knots going through the rings, knots at my finger, and then here we go. So that's knots there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So with 4 turns of the leader on the reel, the lead position is going to be, that's halfway up the rod, that's 6 foot, and I want to cast my lead from about there because I know about 6 inches up from the spigot, that works for me. Optimum is supposedly there, but for my casting technique I get on a bit better there, I get a bit more accuracy there. So that's perfect. I've got 4 turns on the leader and that's enough to absorb the force of the cast that I'm going to induce in it.